they all just walk out to the front of the build and none of them were distributed around the rest of the base. So my next task is to open this out large enough that we can set up the dirt to mud factory inside of here, and then we're going to work on an item filter circuit that's going to make sure only the Pillager's ominous banner is going to allow Jimmy into this room. Beyond that, it's really just a matter of getting the... And I think we can do that pretty easily. This is a much smaller build than the Pirate Skull Fort was, so I think I'm going to be able to get it complete in a fraction of the time. Anyway, I've got a bit of redstone to do, so wish me luck, and I'll see you folks on the other side. So a short time later, we have one mud-making machine in place, and it's pretty consistent for the most part. Skips a block occasionally, but they do seem to do that. I think it's something to do with the timing of the dispensers. Sometimes this dispenser fires before the block gets fully pushed in front, I think, and so it ends up accumulating all in here instead of converting one dirt block every so often. But as long as you're fairly precise and right-click frequently instead of just holding down the right-click button, it doesn't end up malfunctioning that often. And so I think one of the things I'm going to do is leave a written book around here with instructions for the operation of the machine, and that kind of makes sense in-world as well, because this is being operated by pillagers who I'm fairly certain I'm not the brightest, so it kind of makes sense to me to have a book that says, hey idiot, just place them one at a time instead of just spamming them in like this, because that's how the machine is going to break more frequently. But the length of this room is also the push limit of the pistons, which should make sure that it doesn't displace the rail track over here. And the rail track is now actually functional in transporting stuff between these two. If we end up pressing the button here, send this minecart off towards the other room, and we can load it up with mud, be sent through into the drying room. We'll throw a couple of stacks of mud into this minecart chest, we'll hit the button there, and that will send it off on its way. Thanks to a bit of a boost in the tunnel there, it ends up in the drying room, and we can place it out to dry on these racks, which I still need to put the pointed dripstone underneath. You get the idea, and if we're going to move pillagers in here relatively soon, I do want to make sure those campfires are covered so the pillagers don't just jump around. Because it would be kind of embarrassing if he's meant to throw a pillager banner into that barrel, and it turns out that the pillager banners aren't even available because the pillager captains have killed themselves on campfires and then spawned. And to that end, we are actually going to decorate this area with a couple of ominous banners, just to make sure that Jimmy has a backup in here in case the pillager captains get killed and he destroys the banners or something like that, but also so that it kind of artfully conceals the mechanism is also burning. We will still need one for the item filter in here, but thankfully there is a pillager outpost very close by in the desert. And the other troops down here. But in the meantime, I need to make a little bit more mud, just so we can have some examples lying around for when Jimmy comes down here, and so that those drying pallets can be absolutely loaded with mud turning into clay. The dripstone is now in, and the clay has actually dried out pretty quickly. There's only a couple of mud blocks still left here waiting to dry out, so I might actually swap all of this clay for mud before I leave, or I don't know, maybe we can figure out some other way of keeping the clay as mud for the most part here. Maybe I even remove a couple of pieces of dripstone so it looks like some of them still haven't dried yet. But either way, that's all working fine, and Jimmy can continue to use that afterwards if he wants to. We're going to remove this button right here because the mechanism for the filter is now in place as well. If we throw any old items into here to try and remove them with a boss, quill, bits of stone, an iron ingot, something like that, it's not going to work because the filter is now primed so that the only thing it will accept is an ominous banner. That will get filtered through, and it opens the door permanently, allowing Jimmy to walk in and out and discover what exactly it is the villagers have been doing here. But then that door will stay open permanently. There is a button on the inside just in case he gets trapped in here. I don't want him to have to break the door. But it is a pretty straightforward item filter. I've got an ominous banner in here, and an ominous banner is just going to pop through the hopper and end up in the barrel down there. And the other items he throws in are going to go into this barrel. They will be able to pass through the item. So with that all reset, the only thing we have left to do inside of there is a little bit more decoration. In fact, this whole thing is pretty much good to go, except we have to move the pillagers in. Oh, and one other really fun thing about the lift mechanism here, it isn't triggered by the note block in the same way that the barrel up there triggers it. You'll notice there is no observer pointing into this note. But the cool thing is, once we step onto the lift, we'll have to wait for a couple of seconds for our footsteps to die down. We punch that note block, and the lift mechanism activates. That's actually a skulk sensor, which is filtering for the vibration frequency of a note block. When it detects a note block being played nearby, it will activate the mechanism, but only if it isn't already hearing hearing some other sounds. So potentially, if Jimmy isn't standing perfectly still, the lift won't work for him. So there's potentially some fun to be had there in terms of him getting stuck down there in the mines until he figures out how the lift works. He has to be quiet when he activates it. But here is the entrance, still nicely decorated, and over there is the pillager outpost where I just got those 2 ominous banners, and we will be back for more. So as you can probably see and hear, pillager capturing is going very well. I've got, I think, 6 or 8 of them so far. I haven't, oh, I know, 7. I have one that's like back there because I didn't build the cell for him in time and I had to improvise. But I've got 7 of the pillagers all trapped here. They're all name tagged Topple Town Bandits. I like the fact that these guys
Rivali's Gale is now ready.
So they're all the Topple Town Bandits, but I have 2 more name tags, 2 more minecarts, and 2 more cells that I need to occupy, and those are going to be the bosses. And over here at the pillager watchtower, where I have all of the rails and stuff leading up to, I need to make sure I can get a pillager captain who's got a banner, and I don't think that these banners get past.
Oh. Ah.
Between pillagers in the same way that they do during a raid. So I'm really hoping that we can track down a couple of pillager captains, lure them out to the edges of the outpost here, get them trapped in minecarts the way I've been doing with the other pillagers. So this is probably going to be a matter of flying away and respawning the pillagers in this area a few times, just so we can guarantee that the one with the banner is going to A, see us, and B, be in the right place, somewhere sort of over here. But maybe we can lure that one with the banner over here, maybe get rid of some of the underlings. I mostly don't want them to take too much damage in the process, and I don't really want to go and get Bad Omen and have to run off out so that I can dispel the effect. But as you can see, there are a lot of pillagers around. That one with the banner is pretty close though, so I'm wondering if maybe, once you attack one of them, pillagers' range in which they can detect you seems to increase quite dramatically. So it's pretty clear that those guys are onto me, and now we can try and isolate their leader. This guy is floating up to my rail line. I'm going to see if I can get him in a minecart first so I can name tag him before I send him off over there, because it's far enough away that he might end up despawning. And if I send the minecart around the loop this way, it loops here. We stop it using one of the levers, then the guy can be sent back around the minecart the opposite way. Yes, there we go. Okay, we got him. So we're going to stop him using this lever. After a couple of circuits, he should come to a stop. We can name tag him the boss, and we can send him off on his way, and he'll end up in one of the cells over there. Just going to follow him over here to make sure that nothing goes wrong. I have had to put a couple of powered rails under there because the carts kept slowing down, but there we go. He slots in right at the end of the line, and you can see that banner, can't you? Alright, let's link up this last cell. Let's get another pillager with a banner in here. I want to have 2 bosses, just to make it a little bit easier for Jimmy to get hold of one of these banners. And there's another pillager captain over here on this side. Let's see if we can lure him over here. He's up there on the hill right now, but I have a lot of them on me, so I'm going to try and take out these guys first, and it seems like the pillager captain has ordered his friends over here as well. I am getting my fair share of pillager heads and crossbows from this excursion, which I think is honestly a good thing. I think we might be able to do some extra decoration down there in the mineshaft with those. But here comes our second captain. He should get in the minecart. Yes, there we go. As soon as they hit the corners, that's usually when it happens. And we can name tag this guy the boss, activate that lever, and send him off on his way. Let's take care of the underlings as well. And it looks like that guy is all good to go. And at this point, Jimmy is back from his trip to America, so I'm having to do all of this after hours on the server when things are a little bit quieter. Hopefully he doesn't end up logging in while I'm still taking down some of the materials here. And our 2 bosses are chilling over here. Very, very nice. Now, I do have a tunnel that's dug directly down into the drying room where all of the clay is. The idea is that the pillagers will come all the way down here, and activate a rail is going to kick them off the minecart, and they'll be able to hop in here and free roam from that point onwards. So I really need to make sure that all of the set dressing is done before I spend too much time down here. I don't want to risk pillagers pathfinding out over this minecart rail if they get aggroed on me. There's a potential for them to do that, but I definitely want to get a few more details in here. I want to get some beams and props, some mineshaft style decorations. I'm going to put a few of these rails here now that I've brought a few with me. And maybe put some more set dressing ideas around here, some cauldrons or something, so that they can have something to wash their hands or something. I don't know. We can throw some crossbows in here as well, a couple with loaded arrows, a couple without. I actually want to start cooking some of the clay that we've got here. Some of that can be in the form of clay balls, or we can form it up into terracotta. I kind of like the idea that they're also trading bricks from this. But for that, we'll need our chest minecarts to go in here. We'll need to throw some fuel in there as well. We've got to cook some of this stuff. I like the fact that they would have some output here on the other side. Now, Jimmy wants to know the mechanics that are at work here. He can look down through the campfires, because they have a transparent base in this texture pack. You can see there is pointed dripstone below, and that might give him a clue as to how this works if he wants to reproduce this setup somewhere more convenient. Overall, I think this has been really fun to set up. Just a couple more touches and I'm going to make it perfect. Okay, we're almost done here, and I wanted to show you something because I have resolved the problem of Jimmy not stepping into this area before opening the barrel. I thought the solution with the stairs was a little bit clunky and potentially not even all that reliable. So what I've done instead is make this whole elevator thing a little bit more pillager focused. So when he opens the barrel now, instead of immediately activating the elevator, what happens is he'll notice a pillager head and a couple of crossbows, and if he's observant and listening out for anything, he will hear that a block over here on this side ends up shifting to one side, and it does that anytime the observer behind the barrel detects a change, so it'll do it when the barrel opens, but also when the barrel closes. So if he's too busy looking through the loop the first time and this opens and shuts on the left-hand side, once he closes the barrel GUI, it'll open again. It'll basically give him a little bit longer to investigate whatever this is, and as you can see from there, there is a target block back here. It's not too far away because the whole point is that you're supposed to shoot it more or less at point-blank range. If Jimmy isn't carrying a bow at the time, there's a couple of loaded crossbows in here he can use to shoot the target. When he does that, that activates the lift, and that is not really visible. It's not really something you could shoot from out there in the corridors, so he basically has to be standing inside the lift for it to activate. And I think as a solution, that's fairly elegant. Now when we come out in here, there's a couple more details in here. There's a couple more supporting beams and props. There's a little bit of wooden detail, and I'm still going to load in a few more hopper minecarts or chest minecarts around here just to give a little bit more of a, villager mining outpost vibe, even though that's not strictly speaking what this is. There's a little bit more detail inside this room as well, so there's a few more details there, a couple of workbenches, a couple of loose objects, and that kind of thing. I've also shaped the outside of this doorway a little bit more just to make sure that it felt like it was supported, the ceiling was being propped up there. Likewise, over here, we've got a couple of those leading on into this factory floor area where, once again, the clay is pretty much cooked. Although I do have a couple of loose blocks of mud that are separate from the platforms, kind of to give the impression of the fact that mud has been stored around here and is waiting to be put into place. I've decided I'm going to load up the furnaces with charcoal. It kind of makes the most sense. It feels like villagers would have access to charcoal. It still feels a little bit primitive at the same time. And before we let the pillagers in through this hole in the ceiling, I think the only thing that's left to do really is get those chest minecarts in place over here at the auto furnace and out there in the corridor. Oh yes, the other thing I want to do is get the lectern established in here, so we can just have some instructions for how to use this machine. So we'll have a lectern in here over to one side. We might even put it in part of the shelves over here to see if we can lens a little better there. But this book and quill is going to have a decent set of instructions for how to operate the machine, and maybe instructions for the people in the other room as well. Okay, so the Tumbletown Bandits Terracotta Factory now has an instruction manual, which says, Step 1, place the dirt, get to the piston, don't spam it, the machine don't like when you spam it. If you just hold down right click, it starts to spit out water bottles and it becomes a lot less consistent, so it's just about doing it at a pace the machine can handle. Step 2, shovel up all the mud and use the minecart to send mud to the poison next room. Also place the mud on the dry rack to turn it into clay. Once the clay is dry,
Holy
pull it up
shit.
and smelt it. Bricks and shape it back into a block and smelt the terracotta. And finally use the lift to bring the terracotta back upstairs, kind of implying that that's the only way out of it. And hopefully Jimmy will get to read this and decide whether he's going to use the factory himself, or if he's going to maybe copy the technology and use it elsewhere. Or he might just ignore this entirely and just think that's some weird thing that the villagers would do. But I like the idea of introducing him to the whole renewable terracotta idea, and I think it's about time we get these villagers down here. So I'm going to make sure I use
the last time I tried this mod out.
The lift needs to be reset in its original position. I'm just going to wait for
Now I can see the cutscene glint.
and I think we're going to stick a couple of the villagers in this little alcove here, so he gets a bit of a surprise when we're around this corner. The majority of them are going to be downstairs, drying, and it looks like night is falling, or maybe the sun is rising over there. It looks like, yeah, sunrise, so perfect. We're going to grab our box of rails, we're going to grab the levers that I seem to still have on me, and we're going to get all of these pillagers down into the depths of the terracotta smelting room, starting with the 2 boss pillagers, and then moving on to the rest of the crew, until the last 2 get set up here at the entrance. And I'm not entirely certain what's going to happen when the pillager hits this activator rail, which should kick them out of the minecart. I'm not certain if they're going to put them on top of the trapdoors here, or if it's just going to in this space, but putting the slabs here should make sure that they at least don't appear right there on the neighbouring rail and start to climb up this way. Basically, we're making sure the villager can't escape back up the tunnel that they come down. But we had an easy enough time capturing this lot that I'm not that worried about it. If we lose one of them, the worst thing that happens is I have to go and buy another name tag, and that's not too much of a hassle. But there's a powered rail in here now, so I should just be able to pull this lever. Villager captain will be set off on his way, and let's follow him down there. Yes, the bottom of the ramp should be no, he just fell down the trapdoor. Line. It seems like he is there. Okay.
I'm fighting you. Oh, yeah, I'm running.
It is my pleasure.
Our second captain is down here. He hasn't walked willingly into the trapdoors like the other one did, but I'm hoping that we're down here and maybe look around to try and climb towards me. That'll drop him down into the trapdoors as well. There we go. And now he is in here, but where's the other one gone? Oh, dang it. Okay, worst case scenario. Looks like the other boss has made his way out here, so we're going to have to lure him back in, then come up with something a little bit more robust than these minecart rails to block their path. Okay, I think I've seen what they're doing. They're actually walking up onto that log, and that's allowing them to cross the minecart rail. Because look at this guy right now. Doesn't want to get back into the room because the minecart rail is there, and that's preventing him from pathfinding towards him. Break the minecart rail here, that should be fine. He should be able to walk down the room towards us. I can just put his crossbow shot in the shot. But basically we need to eliminate the blocks from around here to make sure that they can't step up onto the minecart rail, and then we should be able to place a couple of blocks around here to get this first guy back up in here. That should give him a way to pathfind up towards me. We'll break the rail here one more time to allow him to cross into the room. Right, both the captains are in here. One of them just shot the other one, but that's fine. We can block them off in here, and now, do they try and pathfind towards me?
What happened to the sun?
So we can still pop a couple of logs around here for set dressing, but the most important thing is that they're not adjacent to the minecart rails, so that the villagers can't walk up onto the block and drop down onto the rail, at which point their pathfinding is totally fine. But yeah, these two seem to be more at home in here now, so I'm going to try and make my escape, and at this point, yes, they don't seem to want to cross those rails. Well, I've softened the villager captains up a little bit. It seems like they've maybe taken a couple of hits now, so they won't be quite as tough for Jimmy to take down. Alright, having resolved the problem, I think it's safe to get the rest of the villagers down in here now. We'll keep periodically checking on those two, but I think as long as they're in there, this whole thing should go according to plan. Alright, back in free cam mode, we've got a pretty decent villager patrol in here, and thankfully none of them seem to have tried to pathfind out over the rail. I think the only possible scenario in which one of them gets out is if they're standing by the rails and then another one pathfinds over and reaches them. onto the rails, which has a very slim chance of happening, especially once I'm out of here and I've unloaded the shovels. So I'm going to cover my tracks at this point. I'm going to fill in the rest of the area, so it looks like we've just airdropped a bunch of pillagers into the pit. We're going to redirect our remaining 2 pillagers into that alcove at the entrance to the final piece of the puzzle is going to be getting other people involved and setting up a terracotta shop in Jimmy's Mesa that other people are going to come and buy from and then ask him, oh hey, I saw you set up a terracotta shop, show that on camera or something like that, and then it will be awesome to log in, investigate and figure out where this location is. And I need to leave him a little breadcrumb trail to follow, but I think somewhere central in Tumbletown, somewhere near the gunpowder shop, seems like a good place for us to set up our terracotta pop-up shop. So let's pick a spot and let's get to it.
Oh, holy shit.
So here it is.
I was like, there's no way it could possibly be any better than the spears that I have.
Totally legit business.
I was proven wrong.
And I'm actually gonna make the first purchase myself here. I had a bit of extra goodies in my bundle, but throwing in there for Jimmy's another experience. But I like the idea of something already having it if nobody else can come online. I put 2 diamonds in there and then terracotta. This is all my terracotta, by the way. Different Mesa, but you might as well act as though it's Jimmy's. But if other people can get online and check this out, then that's good, and it'll encourage Jimmy to potentially investigate what's going on here. Otherwise, he's just going to log in and see this building and think immediately that something's up. But either way, the breadcrumb trail has been laid. I've said if you need more terracotta, if we're out of terracotta, you can go there and ask the boss. Obviously, that sets up the whole thing with villager captains and everything. I'm going to head over and load up the chest minecarts with a little bit of food, but aside from that, this experience is going too well so far. And hopefully, we'll get to see Jimmy's reaction to it very soon. Unbelievable. So Jimmy's video about this is now out, but he missed more than half of it. Like, he saw the balloon, he saw the Tumbletown terracotta thing, he found this place, thanks to me giving the coordinates. And then he went ahead and just blew this up. He blew it up, along with the 2 villagers who were stationed in the alcove around here. He clearly just left idle with some wood and stuff. He blew this up, and then he went down here, opened the barrel, and I think the barrel thing was just too subtle. I should have had the target block appear there. But again, I didn't want to shoot it from the corner, and yet, when that block opened, he wasn't paying attention, he didn't see it, he was just more interested in the stuff that was in the barrel. I honestly should have kept the floor of this moving. I didn't want to have a situation where he just jumped down here or something. I wanted him to be standing on there when it started moving. So, I'm going to have to do some damage control here. I need him to see what's going on down here, because the rest of this is completely untouched. And some of the pillagers, I really hate the fact that they've managed to wander out from here. Hopefully these ones are going to stick around, but the majority of the pillagers have now just gotten into this pit, which is fine. They're down here, maybe it's an ambush. We've got a minecart over here to kind of imagine that the sheriff is going to check the minecart and then all of these guys open fire. At least one of those has the boss flag, at least, but man, I really wish that more of that would stay in here. I don't know what is causing them to track over the minecart rails. They normally don't do that. But now some of this has been destroyed, I kind of want to repair it a little bit. I kind of want to make it look like things have been patched up in between Jimmy coming here and the next time he visits. So I'm going to lay in a little bit of stripped wood, kind of throw in some stuff that feels like it's sort of been patchworked together here. I'm going to add some spruce fence to this as a kind of like, this area is cordoned off. So that maybe we can add a sign on it being like, danger, not safe. And this section here can all be made out of like cobblestone and stuff, as though it's fallen in after the explosion that Jimmy triggered here. And we'll put some fences around that as well, as though they've tried to contain this rock slide that's happened. And just to really egg Jimmy on to investigate this further, we're going to put some more signs outside of the entrance here. Let's go with property of Tumbletown boys. No sheriffs allowed. Sheriff keep out. There we go. That'll pretty much convince him, and I've left a gap in between here so he doesn't have to even break anything. He can just walk on down into this place. But I'm fairly certain that he's going to investigate a little more if he feels like the guys are still using this place as a hideout. And yeah, I wanted to do an interesting entrance kind of thing here, but I decided to just leave it as a cave. I feel like it feels more legit if it's just a cave, and they've kind of thrown together these ramshackle gates and stuff like that to try and keep stuff out. I kind of like that as an idea. I'm going to add in one more thing that I didn't add the first time around, because I totally forgot to stash all of this stuff further down, and honestly, once I filled it with pillagers, I figured, hey, that's probably going to be a bit of a hassle. So instead, we've got Vinny's secret stash down here, and this is going to be another hint at the target blocks having some importance in here, because I'm going to place a target block over here in this ravine, kind of in the background, but maybe like slightly lit by the light sources that I've had to place around here to prevent too many mobs from spawning. And the idea is that when the sheriff shoots a target block over there, it's going to withdraw a piston for a split second, and that's going to reveal this, and maybe we'll have it close off again after a short amount of time, a pulse extender or something like that. But I want it to be out there in the shadows, so he only notices if he looks through some of the, you know, the open areas of these shelves. So we'll have the target block, I want to say, back here. I want it to be a relatively difficult shot, but something that he can definitely make from over there behind those shelves. Also gives me plenty of opportunity to hide redstone down here. That will activate, right? Yeah, that'll be fine. And we'll need to put a repeater in here pretty early, otherwise any hit that's not towards the center is not going to activate the rest of this circuit. And I don't want Jimmy to think that the target block doesn't do anything, because, you know, he's already made that mistake once or twice. And with a repeater into this block here, all we should need to do is put a redstone torch on there. We'll have the piston immediately following that, so that it's already pushing a block out here, and then we'll fill that in. So now, if I cover that up and we shoot the target block from a distance, yeah, that opens up, and it opens up just in time for him to see there's something down here. Then he needs to shoot this again. Time walking over to this, and then he'll be able to access Vinny's secret stash. So not the hardest puzzle in the world, but one that requires a little bit of time. By now we know that the sheriff isn't all that quick on the uptake. Let's see if he's at least quick on the draw. And I think that's where we're going to wrap this project up. Let's see if Jimmy manages to take the bait the second time around. Thank you folks so much for watching this Behind the Lore episode of Empires SMP. My name has been Pixelriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.
I've officially caught up with all the episodes.
Basa! Oh. Ah. Hi.
Oh yeah, I meant to watch this a long time ago.
The Black Emperor, Kurokote. No doubt you've probably heard of her by now. Particularly if you've played mobile games like Archaea or Cytus, kept up to date with BMS, or touched Ursu within the past decade. But if you don't know of her, she's an artist very well known for her versatility and her expressive takes when it comes to composition. With some of the things I've heard her make, I don't think it's a stretch to say that she's spearheaded an approach to rhythm game-esque music that has an emphasis on artistic expression rather than who can make the hardest boss song. Not that there's anything wrong with that though. This is an artist in particular that I've been wanting to talk about, because I think she's one of the most, I guess, misinterpreted artists at the moment. Usually when someone mentions Kurokote, two songs immediately come to mind: Scattered Faith and Galaxy Collapse. Obviously these songs are insanely popular, and that's great, but I think that it's unfortunate that these two songs seem to completely overshadow anything else within her discography, to an extent that I haven't seen with any other major rhythm game artists as of yet. The majority of people I ask who know of Kuro seems to know her as the one that made Galaxy Collapse, rather than someone that makes amazing music. So not only do I want to deep dive into her history, but also give you a glimpse of what's beyond just those two songs. Cause, trust me, You find that it's worth the effort looking past the surface of the world Crooked has created for herself.
Oh. Oh.
Crooked is a French composer whose rhythm game roots come all the way back to around 2010, when she stumbled across those for the first time. Going under the alias Diagadu77, she slowly became hooked to the game, taking heavy interest in O's Taiko. Not only would she become very skilled in that aspect, but she would also begin having a look at the charting scene, with her earliest maps being from 2012, and her earliest ranked map being a Connect R map set, ranked on the 17th of June 2013. She'd remain active within the community for a few years, and also venture around other rune games, including GB Plus, Beatmania, and Citus, before becoming inspired to create some music herself between 2013 and 2014. Now, it's unknown what her previous musical experience is, despite having played violin for several years at that point, but regardless, she appeared to be coming in with absolutely no DTM experience, and armed with FL Studio, she began to upload her earliest tracks onto SoundCloud with the alias Kurokote, which actually stems from her love of the track Black Emperor by Chroma. A lot of her earliest tracks have been privated or deleted, but the ones we can find today are good examples of the kind of timing she was on. She was someone who enjoyed experimenting with different genres and styles early on, and was the type to draw heavy inspiration from the things she was actively listening to at the time. Some of her songs carry that chaotic aura of being a shitpost. Case in point, this. And it also gives off the feeling of just screwing around with Fruity Loops for a few days to figure something out. But even then, with all her early tracks, you can see her potential. And one thing you notice as the video goes on is just how quickly her sound evolves, and how she's able to quickly learn and adapt to an entirely new genre. Whether it's artcore, the earliest of which is represented by the song Art, which to me sounds heavily influenced by Kiryu's Q for at least the first half.
Yes, they didn't take into account Link mod and stuff.
Or breakcore, represented by Mashiro, a song focusing a lot more on quick bursts of breaks and buzzes in succession with fast piano runs. Though I must say, I don't think there's anything on the planet that'll prepare you for what this track evolves into. Extremely bass choice right there by Kurokote. This experience will end very nicely into her later tracks, but by far what quickly grew to be her bread and butter was hardcore and speedcore. Again, these drew inspirations from certain artists at first. For instance, Fiesta 440 is a track that's MIDI inspired, obviously being at 440 BPM and inheriting a lot of the chaos you'd usually hear in literally anything from it. The track that really stood out from the selection of early hardcore tracks, however, was a remix called Closed Eye. A remix of what, you may ask? I'll give you a hint. Touhou. It seems that Kurokote was a big fan of the Touhou soundtrack, and of course, that interest ended up extending into the Touhou doujin scene, a huge web of circles and labels creating pieces inspired by Touhou's soundtrack. These pieces extend across many different genres and many different sections of the internet, but one of the most vibrant is the hardcore scene. Using Touhou's genius crafted melodies, artists take them and transform them into a high-energy, high-powered blitz of sound. And because of how versatile Touhou's melodies usually are, the possibilities are quite literally endless. One of the most prominent artists who fall into this category is Moro, an artist whose style is on the extremely aggressive and extremely fast side, to the point you can straight up say it's just speedcore. If you've ever seen any of the Genso hardcore albums floating around the internet, this is who's responsible for it. And although they no longer produce, they have a reputation of having some of the most brutal sounding remixes in the scene. This is someone who Kurokote would stumble on and eventually take inspiration from, starting with a remix of the classic Heartman's Yokai Go to create something that not only goes hard, but is a much more elegant nod towards Moro's usually rough style. And this will end towards the birth of a saga of Touhou remixes. Over the next year, Kurokote would carry on her trajectory, creating maps and creating music, both original and remixed alike. Over the course of this year, her mixing and general ability in sound design would improve massively, with this being best highlighted in Crystal Barrel, a collaboration with Mimineko, who now seems to be inactive. Not only is this in a league of its own compared to everything before, but this is a special one, because a little while later, this would actually end up being featured in Dynamix, marking Kurokote's debut into rhythm games around 2016, and rightfully so. Its speed and synth melody makes it a perfect candidate for a good chart that isn't too hard. And because it's short, it's a trance song that you can say doesn't feel repetitive, keeping the listener nice and engaged. Not only does it get a cool chart, but look at that cat. The cat's name is Chrysalberry. Unlockable by playing the song in your event mode, and he gives an extra 10% XP, 20% HP, and 10% heal. It's even cooler when you realize that Crystal Barrel is a reference to a semi-precious, greenish gemstone that has the nickname Cat's Eye because of its color and texture. There's levels to this man, truly an underrated classic for both Kuro and Mimi. Though, if we want to get technical, this wasn't exactly her first debut in Turbo games. See, the song released straight after Crystal Barrel is simultaneously the best and worst moment in Kurokutei's career. Again, bearing inspiration from Moro and taken from her now 2 Touhou remixes, one of which is a 2015 remix of Nuclear Fusion. Kurokutei took Heian Alien from Touhou 12's Extra Stage and completely transformed it to create the infamous Galaxy Collapse. The song took approximately 7 hours to make, and it's a special one because of just how many BPM changes it has. Cited from Kurokutei herself, the song begins at 270 BPM and the first break is at 155 BPM. The song then slowly builds up to 520 BPM, only to then flatten out to 300 BPM for the chorus, and so on and so forth until it ended about 320 BPM in the final section. It's definitely a hectic and creative song in its aspect of complete chaos, and it's a style that we definitely had not seen from it before. Pair that with the fact that it genuinely was just a hype song, and from there, it would end up going absolutely ballistic. However, there are many more reasons for that, starting with Kurokutei herself. The thing is, she's also a mapper, right? Sometime after Galaxy Collapse's release, she had the brilliant idea to create a taiko map to the song, but not just any taiko map. See, Galaxy Collapse is a song that naturally lends itself to difficult charting because of its speed and length. So when a 6-minute 8.37 star map dropped into the bottom queue out of nowhere, let's just say it was pretty unheard of at the time, and seemingly against all odds, this would end up actually being ranked in October of 2015. This was the most difficult taiko ranked map back then, being the first 8 stars to be ranked in that game mode, and it's still considered one of the hardest ranked maps today because of its very fast patterns over an extremely long period of time, making it almost impossible to even attempt to get an FC unless you're a world-class player. However, whilst it held that reputation for a while, the song didn't end up exploding from this, no. See, in the description, Kurokutei left a little note that simply stated, "Yes, I made the song, you can map it if you want, it's not like I really care, don't forget to credit me though." And some people will end up becoming inspired by that to begin creating other maps of the song, many of which didn't see the light of day. But there was one whose map in particular seemed to come at just the right time, at a game mode that was still relatively new in comparison with its peers. Oceania, in a time where Oceania's 4-key ranked section was still growing, especially when it came to higher end difficulty. A fellow UK Oceania player, he goes by Matt, noticed a serious lack of difficulty in the ranked section and sought out to create the hardest ranked 4-key marathon to match with Taiko's hardest marathon, which was undisputably Galaxy Collapse. This would end up being the Cataclysmic Hypernova map set, submitted on the 3rd of January 2016, and after a fairly lengthy modding process involving a complete rework of the chart, as well as some assistance from Kurokutei herself, it officially became ranked on the 25th of July 2016. This immediately rose to become one of the most controversial maps in Oceania history because it brought a lot more attention to just how inaccurate the star rating system was, and showed everyone that you can game the PP system by making maps that just requires you to mash your keyboard rather than play actual complex patterns. But on the other hand, because it was 1, a pretty decent sounding song, 2, one of the highest star rated charts at the time that wasn't complete bullshit, and 3, also considered an easy top lane. It was looked up to highly and became the face of Oceania's ranked section for a while. Every player's goal was to get an FC or an SS on the map for the bragging rights, as well as to maximize the DD gain. And well, this was where it really began to gain traction. What then sealed the deal was when an extremely difficult outstanding map set became loved not even 6 months later. It turns out this is actually submitted before Matt's map set, or remained in purgatory for a while, probably because of how ludicrous the map is, before getting the status it has now. Brewmaster L made a pretty good video covering the history of that map, so if you want more information about that, go check that out. Kurokote would also make another Toho remix in August of 2016 that could be considered the sequel to Galaxy Collapse, Scattered Faith, a remix of Toho's Emotional Skyscraper, which would follow the same path as Galaxy Collapse. The song is mapped, and naturally is mapped to be absurdly difficult. People end up flocking to the map because of that, and that compounded into an explosion of popularity. These two songs remain big breadwinners of Kurokote's audience, but like I said in the beginning, this would end up being more of a burden to her because it misrepresented her later musical direction, and it wouldn't take long before she would begin to hate these two songs and wish she never released them. Especially Galaxy Collapse, which I honestly can perfectly understand. Some of you guys really cannot give her a break. At the very least though, it was what put her on the map, no pun intended. And now that the spotlight was beginning to shine on her, she took this as an opportunity to begin taking music a bit more seriously. In 2015, whilst Kurokote continued with expanding her compositional repertoire, there was one song in particular that seemed to mark the beginning of a brand new era for her, that would change her direction and take it to a higher degree in composition. Released on the 1st of November 2015, Valkyrie Attack was an hardcore song with an emphasis on the sound of impending doom. I'm a really big fan of the melody and the instruments used, not to mention the way it actually tends towards drumstep. Drumstep is actually something that she dipped her toes in just after Galaxy Collapse in a song called Iceland, and it was something that proved to be pretty difficult, with even her saying that it was her first and last attempt because she sucks at it. Makes sense, since it wasn't something she was used to, it would require her to take her sound design out of her comfort zone. But, whilst the sound was a bit rough around the edges, it was compositionally sound, and therefore a banger. Valkyrie Attack expands on the sound she explored here, though it does fall a little bit short as it begins to progress, feeling a little too empty and just not being expressive enough. It's still a pretty cool song though, and it turns out this is part of a project that's sought after what BMS players still can only dream of today, an active Western audience. Because I suspect a lot of OST players will come across this, quick explanation of what BMS is. It stands for the B Music Source, which is the standard file format used by BMania 2DX simulators that has all the information about a chart stored in it. This video will turn into a technical nightmare if I explain everything, but one of the biggest things about BMania is that everything is key sounded, as in there is no MP3 playing in the background, but rather each key literally represents a part of the song, and what you hear in game depends on how accurately you're hitting. The format of BMS also incorporates this, requiring the song to be sliced up into key sounds and distributed between each and every note of a chart. This sounds great on paper, but proves to be a big issue when you're trying to get individual sounds out of a fully mixed song, whose sounds are already all blended together. So as a result, BMS creation lended itself much more to the creation of original music for charts, so that you have full control of the stems, leading to the evolution of an incredibly vibrant scene, with decades of music composition behind it. And, unfortunately, that scene is mainly only grown in Japan, to the dismay of anyone outside of there. But B Music West wanted to change this. It wanted to incentivize the western side of the community and introduce newer players to the idea of events and BMS creation. And, thanks to the efforts of Dolphin and Agga, the event ended up becoming a reality, being announced on September the 3rd, 2015, and open registration from January the 9th to January the 16th of 2016. To then open for an impression period the following week. Many notable artists ended up submitting, and at the top of the list, we had Kurokote with Valkyrie Attack, serving as her debut into the BMS scene. Many of the impressions that she would end up receiving reflect what I criticized about, as well as issues with the audio and the chart itself, but many still recognize it as a song with great atmosphere and potential. And with the submission of this track, a whole new world opened up for Kurokote in the midst of her rising popularity, a world that allowed her to expand her horizons as well as gain real criticism. In a similar fashion, carrying on with her momentum, she would end up returning to OS. Word around the block was that there was a new remix contest being ran for the new OS startup theme in town, Circles by Nekodex. You were given the stems of the song and you had the simple task of making the best remix you can, with the only real restriction being that the main melody must clearly be in the song. Not only would this be a chance to show off to the community, but supposedly OS stuff as well, citing Seismix, Nekodex, and Peppy himself, not to mention the chance for some moolah. Kurokote would submit her remix in May of 2016, maintaining the drum and bass vibe of the original song, but introducing the dubsteppy complexio element to it. And whereas Circles is much more upbeat, the chords used in the remix makes it sound a lot more emotional and reflective instead. It's a really good take on Circles that shows off her growing prowess in sound design, and honestly, I prefer this over both Circles and the super old host we had back in the day. It seems over 2,000 others agreed with me. at least partially, with over 9% of the votes belonging to her. Kuroko Te took the runner-up position pretty comfortably, and being beaten out by nobody but none other than Billy Moto. As a side note, despite what I said, I'm disappointed that Daiki wasn't the winner when he clearly swept the competition, and part of me isn't being ironic when I say that. But I digress. Kuroko Te really hit the ground running now, and following up from her debut with BMS, she decided to join in on the biggest BMS event of the year for the first time, the BMS Fighters Ultimate in 2016. That line is almost tradition at this point, isn't it? It was within the BMS Fighters that she joined in a team with 6 others, including Sotui, who you may recognize if you played Citus, and Zoe Van West as a composer and singer respectively. We also had Ovenize for Charlton, and 6Xenon9, and King Harkinian for background animation, to make Team Byzantium Firmament. As a team full of relatively new faces, it was a surprise to see what they were capable of with their 3 songs. Sotui and Zoe Van West released Cherry Blossoms Fall, a song borrowing from mainstream hardcore and J-core alike that features some of the hardest kicks known to man. Meanwhile, Kuroko Te took a slightly different approach with the release of not 1, but 2 tracks. Both of her songs were a lot calmer and related in some way to the concept of time. Actually, on the concept of concepts, as time goes on, her way of storytelling and creating concepts through songs increases tenfold, and the origin of that happening, at least as far as I know, started with these 2 songs. Let's start with Fractured Temporal. This song makes one thing clear to me. Her compositional skills have improved majorly from Valkyrie Attack. The melody is just full of life in comparison to things I've heard from her before this, and the mix sounds much fuller this time. The classical instruments sound amazing laid on top of each other. What seems to be a central instrument, actually, is the violin, which, if you recall what I said at the very beginning of the video, judging by the text shown right before the big drop, perhaps this could be related to how quickly her time spent with music flew. Who knows, but it's a nice subtle reference to her roots, and to be honest, this is one of my favorites to come from her, ever. Next we have what is definitely one of her more popular songs, Chronostasis. Reason being, this song would eventually end up being added to Archaea in 2017, and anyone who's played knows that this is the chart that serves as a bit of a bridge between 8s and 9s. Although it got nerfs to an 8 in a recent update, since it's considered very easy for its rating, it still definitely is a chart that will take up and coming players by surprise, mainly because of the speed of the ground notes and the occasional awkward fingering needed. All of this done to fit the unrelenting piano runs present throughout. Couple that with the drum and bass style percussion, the clock ticking sounds, and the chorus, which for some reason I only just realized were actually voices laid on top of each other to create the lead melody. From all that, you quickly see why the song itself is dubbed as a timeless article, because it makes this song timeless. Both of these songs showcase a clear vision that Kuroko Te was working towards, and while she will still continue experimenting in other genres, as you later see, it's from this point you'll find her leaning towards the side of hardcore. The funniest thing about these 2 songs is that, performance-wise, they didn't end up doing crazy well. Fractured Temporal got a ranking of 207th in the individual section, and Chronostasis got 276th. Not bad considering how stacked the song list is, but being in the hundreds gets you lost in a sea of other songs. So, as you can imagine, they went very far under the radar, until Chronostasis began to pick up steam from Archaea. Shout out to whoever scouted the song for the game, by the way. And Fractured Temporal picked up steam from Chronostasis' growing popularity, and just generally being a banger. I already implied this in my last video about Silent Room. Just goes to show that rankings and impressions don't matter as much as people think they do. So, to all my BMS artists out there, just go out and have some fun. Speaking of, Team Byzantium would then return again in 2017 to UF, retaining the same team members as before, bar Zoe Van West, Ovenize, and King Harkian, and adding new members, Gune, Kirkus, Missionary, Usuro, and Victor64N to create the Renaissance. And boy, what a fitting name, because these guys completely outdid themselves compared to last year. Sotui and Missionary came in hardcore with another J-mainstream hardcore track, with what has to be the heaviest bass kick I've ever heard, being used to fuel Missionary's over-the-top composition. A track that hits even harder than last year, and with a cool background animation to boot, made by 6Xenon9. He also had Yahiro Dono, by someone who goes by Usuro, which is a modern take on traditional Japanese-style music that adheres to the standards of the fast and electronic sound of BMS, while showing off the beauty of that side of Japan. This song was the highest score, and for Usuro's first debut with BMS, Man was in a banger entry. Meanwhile, Kurokote once again had contributed 2 songs out of the team's roster. First was Luminescence, a song that uses an irregular drum pattern to build a world controlled by some of the most satisfying bass vocals I've ever heard. I'm not sure what the technique is called, but there's a sick distortion kind of thing going on that adds a ton of flavor to each one, only to then break into a standard article section towards the end with a lovely piano melody. This was a collab with...
I gotta pee.
Kune, who unfortunately ceased being active now, and the background animation was again made by 609, which I'm a huge fan of. A bit shocking, it ended up not getting many impressions, but I honestly think that this song will stand the test of time if it ever gets added to any official rhythm game. To go from Iceland to this, in my opinion, it shows off some of their best work in Samazon, and it truly deserves more. In addition to Luminescence, was what was the ace song of the team. Dubbed as an art break, this song goes by A star. Now at first glance, this name and this background seems to have no meaning. That is, until you look at the description. You should be able to recognize that this is code for something. But not just any code. If you dabble in programming or IT in general, you may be familiar with some of the standard algorithms normally used for what's called graph searching. If you're particularly well versed, you'd immediately recognize that this is actually a version of the H-star search, a type of heuristic algorithm that finds the shortest path from a specified source to a specified goal. This algorithm is extremely popular for its completeness, simplest to implement, and optimality, and this entire song is both a visualization and audioization, I guess, of the A-star algorithm, creating a song that gradually gets more intense the closer the algorithm gets to its goal. Kurokote is someone who is shown to be very into IT, so to see an entire song based on this is not a surprise. And the background art, created by Circus, has many references to microcontrollers, polygon environments, and an actual star that eventually finds its destination node. Overall, as both an hardcore fan and computer scientist, this is by far one of my favorites to come from Kurokote, and I sure do hope I've introduced some of you to its brilliance. He gets an A-star from me. With 4 stellar songs, by the end of the event, the Renaissance collectively managed to score a total of just over 99,000 points, landing them 50th out of 166 teams. Not bad, all things considered. And while it's a big improvement from last year in terms of placement, it's an even bigger improvement from last year in terms of song quality. Of course, Kurokote will not only do this, but also continue delivering outside of the US, continuing to upload on their SoundCloud and on their YouTube. Some of these are really good remixes, but the majority are some very interesting experimental tracks. Some of these tracks also seem to be tied to specific labels. For instance, the track that comes straight after A-star, 0x92BC, is the one that, in the description, is said to be released as part of HTRNY Volume 1, a compilation album by How Shiny Industries, a now defunct music label hailed from France, focused on experimental and digital art. There really isn't any info about these guys, aside from their Bandcamp, and it's here their albums are located, including the H-Trini Volume 1. I say this song has one of the trickiest things I've ever heard, that being the section from 1 minute 4 seconds to about 125, where the kick seems to be operating at a completely different BPM to everything else, resulting in this. A little too trippy for my taste, but it immediately picks up from there. Actually, psych, no it doesn't. It returns to that decent thing, before bridging with a very glitchy orchestra, only to end with a breakcore and hardcore infusion. Yeah, this song has to be one of the most erratic things I've ever heard. I can feel myself going insane just listening to it, and I feel like the feeling expressed is something that actually fits very well. The title, at least. The title, being just a bunch of nonsense, you say, well, if you're again familiar with the workings of a computer, or have a background in number bases, you would know about hexadecimal, and if you convert the hexadecimal shown here into its decimal representation, which is the numbers we're all familiar with, we get 37,564. Okay,
supposed to be anyway.
And, well, okay, this is something that's very specific and extremely clever, but if I say the phrase, Minna Goroshi to you, does that have any meaning? I know that there's some of you that recognize it despite not knowing any Japanese, fucking weebs, but it's a phrase that roughly translates to kill them all. Now, if you were to say, get a Japanese dictionary, and look at the possible readings of each digit of this number in Japanese, one possible combination you can get is mi, na, go, ro, and shi. Although this is a very popular wordplay already in Japan, the way it was incorporated here and hidden through hexadecimal is just as clever. And although it's a song that would chip you out, it's something that grows on you. Either that, or you just might really great to listen to, which I can understand. Another track she released on How Shiny Industries was Include Signal.h, another reference to program, with include being a way to include a header file in your program, and Signal.h being what contains the headers for program signals. Not literal electronic signals, but signals sensed by programs when they want a certain thing done by the operating system. For instance, when they need to be killed. It's another tricky one, but this time less so in its timing and more in the constant BPM changes. Ironically, similar to the oscillation of an actual signal. The song gives psytrance with a mix of breakcore and with the speed of speedcore, balancing all that out with an expressive melody. This came as a part of HTRNI Volume 2. However, for some reason, this is not on their Bandcamp. Maybe it got taken down for some copyright or something. Either way, it seems that Signal.h is the last fragment from HTRNY Volume 2 that exists on the internet, at least officially. Overall, at this point in time, it seems like the tide has definitely shifted now. What was originally a very discernible sound, like when you do hardcore or speedcore, has now now evolves to something completely different and completely unrecognizable. Despite me attempting, I couldn't give you a concrete answer as to what the genres of some of these songs actually are. It's quite literally just whatever sounds good, and that's probably what I enjoy the most. You never know what to expect when you click on a Kurokote song. Really, anything goes. And the absolute personification of this comes in an entry to the BMS of Fighters 16 in 2019. Byzantium carries on with their conquest, this time going under the alias Destruct, with the main roster being Kurokote and Billy Moto, which is a musical match made in heaven, as well as 6 Xenon 9, Inukoro, A0 Project, Dolphin, Psyche, and Tonosuke, supporting with background animation, charting, and lyrics? Yeah, the song that would be submitted, going by Alice Morn, was a bit unique when it came to its direction, with a large focus of it being on storytelling through music, and of course the background. The creation of Alice Morn actually starts in about March or April of 2019, when she became inspired by a song called Karma by Mason Book Girl. Karma itself is a song whose lyrics are pretty vague, but Kurokote got a feel for it regardless, and from that came up with an idea for a concept, a love story gone wrong. From there, Kurokote got to work, adopting the pop rock feel of Karma and morphing it into what I could best describe as artcore. Adopting the pop rock feel also meant, of course, keeping the vocals, and originally Kurokote wanted to find the vocals for it, but unfortunately couldn't find one on time, so she opted to use Vocaloid instead, which is what you hear in the song. And the lyrics sang were written by Dolphin, which are a bit hard to hear in the actual song, but thankfully is included within the readme of the chart, so it's not the end of the world. On top of this, the background art was made by Unukuru, who was directed by Kurokote to use Obotol from Friends 2012 as a reference for what would eventually represent a tale of quite literally breaking bonds with someone, leaving them unforgiven. This, paired with Billy Moto's Ruby, which would be the intro to his new album, Rabbit Hole, would end up shaking the competition, and by the end, Destruct would end up placing 29th, with Ruby placing 68th, and Alice Morn placing at a well-deserved 30th. Not a thing I expected from Kurokote, and something that I'm surprised isn't in more rhythm games. It was sometime after submitting this, on December 6, 2019, that Kurokote would then drop her first ever album, Into the Void. This was a special one, because much like Signal.H and Co., it wasn't released independently, except this also wasn't released under How Trendy Industries. Rather, it was released under Rising Sun Tracks, a label owned by her former teammate, Sotui. You may notice, however, that nowadays it's under a label called the Mind Shards Music Group, which also seems to be owned by Sotui. Not sure if this is supposed to be replacing Rising Sun Tracks, or if it's a separate thing, but that's where the album is now. So, Sotui and an individual named Ivan Sequiero took it upon themselves to help out with the mixing and mastering process, and with that, Kurokote dropped 11 tracks, some of which are complete originals, and some you may recognize that were remastered and or extended. The album is a pretty good summary of what to somewhat expect from Kurokote if you're a new listener, and on the other hand, it's a fantastic album if you're already familiar with her but are just looking for more from her. Between the intense hardcore, artcore, orchestras, and the psytrance that I'm 90% sure is a nod to Infected Mushroom, there is something out there for everyone here. I won't lie to you, when I first listened to it, it did feel a little bit short, and a lot of the tracks left me feeling a little bit unsatisfied, as if there could be more, but I still find myself coming back to it every so often, and with each passing time, I feel myself growing to love this album for what it is, and I can assure that if you've watched this far, you would end up feeling the same way. From here, she would continue on her path to compose each song being as rare as the last. Some that are amazing interpretations of genres she's listened to, some that give you space to reflect on yourself, some that are stories in and of themselves that I again hope to talk about very soon, and some that are just bangers. Long story short, Kurokote is a fantastic artist, heavily misrepresented, and ironically, heavily underrated. If this video didn't manage to convince you, then hey, I guess she just isn't your cup of tea. I can respect that. Either way, she's already left a huge mark in rhythm gaming with her music, but this is definitely only the beginning for her. And, well, I wish nothing but success to the Black Emperor. Before I go, here's some honorable mentions of things I didn't get around to talking about, but are still just so good. And with that, I encourage you to explore her discovery. And as always, be sure to support Kurokuse. Link to her platforms in the description. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. And comment if you want to see next. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in a bit.
The Yiga are mad at me when Koga's the one who killed himself. Sure, I'll be there. Fuck, do I need a chest key for that? Fuck. Honestly, Koga's such a great antagonist. I don't get why people hate him. And yeah, sure, it's disappointing, but like, I honestly see Master Koga as a reward boss fight rather than an actual boss fight. You went through all that bullshit. Your reward is beating up their incompetent leader. A comedic leader as well, at that as well. guys better give me one. Fuck. Whoa. Yeah, that's a good blow. Ooh, durability up. Got what I needed. Let's get out of here as quickly as we can. Avoid any unnecessary tussle.
Rivali's Gale is now ready.
Traveling back's gonna be a pain. I guess this is what I'm dealing with from now on.